Welcome to History Beyond Sleep, where we uncover the secrets the textbooks tried to hide.
The desert at night is not silent, not truly. It breathes, it hums, it sighs beneath the weight of centuries. The wind, soft as linen, moves gently across the dunes, like the fingertips of memory brushing over forgotten skin. Here, in the cradle of ancient Thebes, where the stars once aligned with pyramids and prayers, the sand holds more than dust. It holds stories. Some we know, grand tales of Ramses and Tutankhamun, of temples kissed by sunrise and names carved deep into stone. But others have vanished, slipped between the lines of scrolls and records, drowned in the hush of erasure. These are not the pharaohs that history remembers. They are the kings without a voice, the rulers without a monument, the names, lost to time and politics and fear. Their tombs lie buried, not just under earth, but under neglect. And if you walk quietly through the Valley of the Kings, or deeper still into lesser-known burial sites like Dra Abu El Naga or South Saqqara, you may find the entrances sealed, unmarked, no fanfare, no gold leaf, no guards, just a faint sense of presence, as if something beneath the earth is listening. There is something sacred about the forgotten. To forget is a human act, but to be forgotten, to be deliberately obscured, that is something else entirely. It invites questions that echo softly through the corridors of time. Why were some pharaohs buried in silence? Who buried them and who erased them? The wind does not answer. It only carries more sand. To begin understanding this silence, we must first understand what it means to be remembered in ancient Egypt. Pharaohs, after all, were not merely kings, they were gods on earth. To inscribe one's name was to carve eternity. The hieroglyph, more than a word, was a key to the afterlife. A cartouche, that oval encircling a king's name, wasn't just decorative. It was protection. To lose it was to risk never awakening in the field of reeds, the Egyptian paradise. And yet, some tombs bear no cartouches. Some sarcophagi lie in sealed rooms decorated with images of gods and rituals, but no names, no dates, no lineage, just silence. Were these unfinished tombs? Were they desecrated after death? Or were they built this way on purpose? It is easy to romanticize mystery, but archaeologists tread carefully here. In Egypt, the line between erasure and reverence is delicate. Some rulers, especially those who came to power during times of chaos, may have chosen anonymity as protection. Others may have had it forced upon them. During the late Second Intermediate Period, when Egypt was divided, pharaohs rose and fell in rapid succession. Civil war, drought, and foreign invaders created a chaotic cycle of brief reigns and violent transitions. A king crowned in Memphis might be overthrown before his tomb was even started. His body might be buried hastily without the usual ceremony, or worse, hidden to prevent rivals from destroying it. In such times, being forgotten might have been the only way to be safe. There is also the question of spiritual danger. Egyptian priests held immense power, particularly in Thebes. They were the keepers of ritual, the interpreters of divine will, the guardians of sacred knowledge. A king who clashed with the temples or sought to change the old gods risked not only rebellion but eternal disgrace. Some tombs bear signs of priestly revision, paintings altered, texts scratched out. In certain chambers, depictions of Osiris, the god of the dead, are missing altogether, replaced with strange hybrid figures or abstract starscapes. Were these artistic experiments or heresies hidden in plain sight? In the tomb of a little-known noble named Pentu, who may have served under Akhenaten, we see an unfinished image of the Aton, the sun disk worshipped during Egypt's short-lived monotheistic revolution. The scene was partially chiseled away. Someone tried to erase it. Someone else, centuries later, tried to restore it. Even among the forgotten, the battle for memory continues. And then there is the matter of geography. The famous tombs lie in the Valley of the Kings, a dry, majestic stretch of desert cliffs on the Nile's western bank. But beyond the tourist routes, beyond the mapped tombs and cleared trails, are ridges and canyons still untouched. Some may hold unopened tombs. Others hold only hints. A stone too square to be natural, a breeze escaping from a crack in the rock, the faint smell of old incense lingering where it should not be. In 2020, archaeologists unearthed a sealed shaft near Abydos, one of Egypt's most sacred cities. Within, they found fragments of a burial untouched for 3,000 years. The body, unwrapped, lay in a crude coffin. There were royal emblems, a cobra headdress, a piece of broken scepter, but no name. The team didn't announce it loudly. They still aren't sure what they found. A prince, a rival, a woman disguised as king, or perhaps someone no record dared to name. To the ancient Egyptians, memory was magic. It was power, fuel, salvation. To speak the name of the dead was to keep them alive in the next world. And so the greatest punishment was not execution, it was erasure. And that is what makes the forgotten tombs so haunting, not just because they are mysterious, but because they are silenced voices. They speak of lives unrecorded, of prayers unspoken, of afterlives suspended. And yet, even now, the wind blows. The sand shifts. The stars shine overhead in patterns, once charted by priests in ivory towers. And somewhere beneath, the tombs still whisper, not with words, but with presence. Perhaps memory cannot be destroyed. Perhaps eternity finds its way, even through absence. And so we listen, not with ears, but with wonder. And the night begins to speak. There is a particular stillness to a tomb without a name, not the stillness of peace, nor the dignity of death, but something heavier, something unresolved. It clings to the stone like a forgotten prayer. A sarcophagus rests in darkness, beautifully carved, its corners softened by time, its lid sealed tight. But the name that should sing across it is missing. No hieroglyphs, no cartouche, no voice to carry through the centuries. To most, a tomb without a name is simply incomplete. To Egyptologists, it is an echo, one that whispers louder than stone. In the landscape of ancient Egypt, names were more than identity. They were breath. A pharaoh's name was a spell, a sacred signature linking the mortal world to the divine. It wasn't just spoken. It was carved into monuments, painted on tomb walls, written in ink on amulets and papyri. The full titulary of a king included 5 names, each one a statement of divine purpose and lineage. So when a tomb is discovered with no such names, the silence becomes deafening. Who lies inside? There are many theories, and each leads deeper into a tapestry of mystery. In some cases, Tombs may have been looted or damaged in antiquity, their inscriptions lost in the fury of time. But what about the tombs where no sign of a name ever existed? No chisel marks, no remnants of pigment, no erased glyphs. These are not mistakes. These are choices. Let us travel now to South Saqqara, a quieter necropolis, away from the grandeur of Giza and the drama of the Valley of the Kings. Here, beneath a layer of ancient sand and collapsed brick, a tomb was found in 2001. It held a massive uninscribed sarcophagus of black basalt, over 60 tons, perfectly sealed, a feat of engineering that spoke of royalty or someone very close to the throne. Inside, a skeleton, male, roughly 40, no jewelry, no mask, no hieroglyphs. Nothing. Archaeologists were stunned. To build such a tomb required wealth, power, and intention. So why no name? Why no legacy? Was this a pharaoh removed from the official record? A usurper whose memory was condemned? Or someone who chose to vanish, knowing that even kings can be hunted by time? The ancient Egyptians believed in damnatio memoria, the deliberate destruction of a person's legacy. To chip away a name was to destroy one's soul. And history is full of such erasures. Consider the female pharaoh Hatshepsut, whose name was scratched from many temples by her stepson. Or Akhenaten, whose revolution was so controversial that later rulers tried to eliminate every trace of his reign. But even they, erased as they were, left scars. One can still see the outlines where their names once stood. But these nameless tombs, they bear no scars. Only emptiness. That is what makes them so unsettling. Some scholars believe these tombs belonged to kings who ruled during Egypt's intermediate periods, eras of political fragmentation, when rival dynasties ruled in different regions, and kingship was less secure. During the first intermediate period, c. 2181 to 2055 BCE, local rulers called themselves kings, but their power was fleeting. In the second intermediate period, c. 1650 to 1550 BCE, the Hyksos foreign rulers established themselves in the north, while Theban kings held the south. These were times of shifting loyalty and quiet coups. A ruler might die in power but be forgotten by the next generation. In such times, even a pharaoh might receive a tomb, but not a name. And perhaps that was enough, a hope at least to find. Eternity without legacy, a risk taken. For peace in the afterlife. In the Valley of the Kings, tomb KV-60 was long believed to belong to an anonymous noblewoman. The chamber was crude, the decorations sparse. 2 female mummies were found, one without wrappings. For decades they lay unclaimed, until researchers in the early 2000s proposed that one of them was Hatshepsut, her identity hidden not by enemies, but by loyal priests. It's possible that those who loved her sought to protect her, to bury her where no one would look, to give her rest while history raged above. The idea that anonymity could be a gift, a shield, changes how we read these nameless tombs. Perhaps not all were erased in disgrace. Perhaps some were hidden in love. There is, too, the deeper possibility that these tombs belong not to the great, but to the nearly great, to brothers who almost ruled, to queens who never wore the crown, to children of pharaohs caught in the current of ambition but never reaching the shore. Ancient Egypt was a place of ceremony and lineage, but also of succession crises and court politics. Even a small misstep, a wrong mother, an untimely death, a failed coup, could mean exile from the annals of history. Such a soul might still be buried in honor, but in silence, a heavy sarcophagus, a sealed chamber. No cartouche, no risk, only stillness. We return now to the mystery of absence. The void speaks in riddles. In tombs like those in Wadi el-Hudi and el-Koka, where regal burials bear no inscriptions, archaeologists have learned to listen differently. They read the materials. Was the coffin made of cedar from Lebanon? They read the ritual placement. Were canopic jars present, and if so, how many? They study the murals. Were the gods depicted treating the figure as divine or mortal? Even without a name, these clues tell a story not of identity, but of intention. And sometimes the absence of a name becomes the presence of a question that endures across centuries. There's a kind of poetry to it, isn't there? That even in a culture obsessed with memory and eternal names, some chose or were forced to sleep anonymously. That a pharaoh, once surrounded by servants and scribes and sacred flame, might now lie alone in the cool hush of a limestone chamber, unspoken, unknown. And yet not unloved, because here you are, listening, imagining. And in doing so, you restore a measure of eternity. For in ancient Egypt, to speak of the dead, even the nameless, is to bring them back to life. So, tonight, let us remember not the glory, but the quiet, not the monuments, but the missing, not the kings whose names lit up temples, but those whose names never made it to the wall. And let the wind carry their presence through the dunes, as the stars overhead begin to blink awake. Every tomb is a thought made solid. Behind every carved pillar and painted ceiling lies the hand of someone who dreamed in stone. The pharaoh may have commanded the tomb, but it was the architect who summoned the afterlife from rock and echo. He was the planner of eternity, the engineer of divine sleep. And yet, like the pharaohs they buried, many of these architects are also forgotten. No statues honor their genius, no songs preserve their names, but the tombs endure, silent tributes. To minds who bent stone into meaning. It is easy to imagine the grandeur of royal tombs, the towering halls, the sacred geometry, the long corridors descending into darkness. But before the rituals, before the gold, before even the death, someone had to design the pathway to the afterlife. Who were these hidden architects? In ancient Egypt, the title chief of works or overseer of construction in the necropolis carried enormous spiritual weight. These men were not just builders. They were philosophers, mathematicians, mystics. They understood more than materials. They understood meaning. To carve a burial chamber was to imitate the underworld. To shape a corridor was to mirror the sun's journey through the 12 hours of night. To decorate a ceiling with stars was to map the soul's ascent through the sky. One of the most famous and rare named architects was Eneni, who served under Pharaoh Thutmose I in the 18th dynasty. Eneni supervised the cutting of the first royal tomb in the Valley of the Kings. His inscription reads, "No one saw, no one heard," a quiet boast of discretion. Eneni understood that building a pharaoh's tomb was a sacred secret, one to be carried to the grave. But Aini was the exception. Most tomb architects were deliberately anonymous. Their work was spiritual service, not legacy. And in the case of the forgotten pharaohs, even their architects have vanished or hid themselves by design. Let us pause to consider a strange truth. Some of the most mysterious tombs in Egypt are also the most mathematically perfect. In a tomb like Kivi 3-5, the symmetry is exquisite, the celestial diagrams perfectly aligned to solstices and star paths, yet no builder's name is found. In the tombs without names, we still find intricate ventilation shafts, false doors to deceive robbers, drainage systems to protect from rare Nile floods. Why go to such effort for a king whose name was never recorded? Why carve elaborate granite, sarcophagi, and leave no inscriptions? Could the architects have known the tombs would remain nameless? And if so, were they building for someone else? In Deir el-Medina, the village of tomb builders, we find fragments of their lives. This was a walled community, secretive, sacred. Only those trusted with royal burials were allowed to live there. They worked in teams, slept in mud-brick homes, and wrote letters in delicate hieratic script. We find complaints about stolen copper, drawings of cats chasing mice, and even love poems. But we also find cryptic references to tombs never to be spoken of, secret commissions, abandoned projects, burials relocated without record. The suggestion is haunting that some tombs were built in silence on purpose, not by accident, not due to looting, but by instruction. Imagine now an architect called by a priest, not a pharaoh. Imagine the instructions whispered, the payment discreet. A tomb was to be built for one who must not be known. No cartouche, no painted halls, only function and concealment. In such cases, the architect was not a servant of the king, but a guardian of secrecy. His designs were not announcements of power, but veils, puzzles of stone meant to mislead robbers, silence gossip, and erase all trace of ambition. Sometimes the tomb itself was a decoy. We have evidence of tombs with false sarcophagi, empty coffins sealed in ceremonial chambers, while the real burial was placed deeper, behind hidden corridors. A master architect could design these illusions with breathtaking precision, masking doorways behind false walls or offsetting the alignment to trick the eye. In KV 55, one of the most debated tombs in Egypt, the chamber is simple, yet deceptive. The sarcophagus was smashed, the body unwrapped, and still confusion reigns. Was it Akhenaten? Smenkhkare, a royal enemy interred in haste? The layout of the tomb suggests last-minute changes or deliberate misdirection. If so, someone knew exactly what they were doing. There are also tombs with elements that seem out of place, carvings in the wrong style, unusual stones sourced from far-off quarries, underground chambers that align not with Osiris, but with stars foreign to Egyptian cosmology. Were these imported visions? Foreign architects? Or secret sects of builders who held other beliefs? One theory suggests that some tombs were constructed by a guild of mystic architects, men who believed the burial chamber was not just for death, but for transformation. Their designs hint at alchemical allegories, journeys through symbolic geometry, and even star maps encoded with hidden paths. This may sound romantic, speculative, but the symbols are real. And in the absence of names, symbols are all we have. Even today, modern architects and engineers study the ancient tombs with awe, the precision of carving, the load-bearing ingenuity, the flawless angles of descending shafts that run for hundreds of feet. Some tombs were cut from single slabs of limestone, no joints, no seams, requiring tools and techniques that remain poorly understood. And yet the names of their designers are dust. The pyramid of Khafre may still rise like a dream from the Giza Plateau, but who drew the first line? Who sketched its shadow on the earth? Who stood alone at dawn, placing a stone to meet thee? Son, the hidden architects of eternity lived in the margins of history, and perhaps they chose it that way. Their reward was not fame, but function, not immortality in name, but in stone, for their structures endure. Their silence endures, and in that silence we feel their presence more deeply than any inscription could offer. Tonight, as you close your eyes and drift deeper into this story, imagine the first chisel strike in a hidden valley, a boy grown into man holding a vision in his mind, a corridor not yet carved, a burial chamber that would never bear a name, and yet it would carry a soul to the stars. Between the glory of dynasties there comes a hush, a pause in the endless cycle of crowns and conquests, a quiet space where power slips from palace to temple, and men of faith become men of throne. These were the priest-kings of the interregnum, rulers who wore sacred garb instead of royal regalia, whose scepters were symbols of ritual rather than conquest. They did not always bear the illustrious titles of Pharaoh, yet they claimed the throne of Egypt with hands steeped in incense and secrets. Their reigns are shadowed in mystery, for they straddled two worlds, the earthly and the divine, the seen and the hidden. The interregnum periods, times between established dynasties, are some of the most turbulent and obscure in Egyptian history. Civil war, famine, and foreign invasions created power vacuums, and amid this chaos the powerful priesthood of Amun in Thebes grew stronger. They were the gatekeepers of the gods, the arbiters of divine will, and in the silence of dynastic collapse, some priests stepped from the shadows. They crowned themselves pharaoh or became kings without the usual pomp. They built tombs. They minted coins. They ruled. Yet the record of their existence is fractured that few temples boast their names. Few monuments chant their stories. Instead, their legacy lingers faintly in cryptic hieroglyphs, in unfinished statues, in tombs that hold no fanfare. It is here, in these half-remembered reigns, that some of the forgotten pharaohs lie, priest-kings who dared to claim eternity, but were denied memory. Why were these rulers forgotten? Was it the resentment of the next dynasty, seeking to erase inconvenient chapters? Was it the whisper of rebellion, the fear that religious power had overstepped? Or was it the priest's own choice, a sacrifice to the delicate balance between sacred duty and mortal ambition? Some tombs suggest the answer. Hidden deep in Thebes are chambers with intricate symbols of Amun, the ram-headed god, but the king's name is missing or deliberately defaced. Paintings show priests in ceremonial robes, not warriors in armor. The tombs are simpler, quieter. These are not grand palaces of death, but sanctuaries of secrets. In 1085 BCE, Egypt was fractured. The 21st dynasty priests ruled Thebes while the Tanite kings held the north. These two powers shared Egypt uneasily, their alliances fragile and their rivalry fierce. Priest kings in Thebes ruled in all but name, controlling the temples, the grain, the armies. They could not always claim the throne openly, but their authority was undeniable. Some of these priest kings chose to bury themselves in secrecy, in tombs that blend priestly symbolism with royal motifs, yet bear no royal names. It is as if they wished to hide in plain sight. The tomb of a priest king discovered in the 20th century near Karnak is a case in point. Its walls bear the weight of sacred texts and ritual scenes, yet the usual royal titulary is missing. The coffin is crafted with care, but the name painted on it was scratched away by unknown hands. Who erased it? Enemies, successors, or perhaps the priest kings themselves? This erasure may have been part of the ritual, a deliberate act to blur the boundary between priest and king, man and God, mortal and eternal dot in the ancient Egyptian worldview. The afterlife was a place where earthly distinctions faded. To be buried as a priest was to hold divine favor. To be buried as a king was to claim ultimate power. To be both was dangerous. These priest kings may have feared the jealous gaze of history, and so they cloaked their identity in shadow. Yet their tombs whisper a different story, one of quiet dignity, of a man caught between worlds, of a ruler who commanded not armies, but the prayers of a nation. They chose simplicity over splendor, mystery over monuments. In their tombs, incense still lingers. In their chambers, shadows dance. For us today, these silent tombs are invitations. To listen to the voices beneath the dust, to read the symbols etched not in triumph, but in humility, to honor those who ruled without glory, but with faith. Tonight, as the desert wind cools and the stars gaze down with ancient eyes, think of the priest kings resting beneath your feet. Their stories are veiled, but their presence is felt. Their reign may be forgotten, but their souls endure, waiting to be found. And as you drift into sleep, carry their quiet strength with you, like the soft chant of a temple hymn, ancient, eternal, and full of secrets. In the long history of ancient Egypt, pharaohs were gods on earth, divine manifestations of order and cosmic balance. Yet there were those rare kings whose visions broke the sacred mold, who challenged the ancient gods in the rituals that had ruled for centuries. To many, they were heretics, and history, with its patient hand, sought to bury them not just in stone, but in silence. One name rises quietly from the sands of rebellion: Akhenaten, the pharaoh who dared to worship one god alone, the radiant 18, the sun disk. He uprooted temples, closed shrines, and replaced centuries of worship with a radical new faith. But his legacy was condemned. His name was struck from monuments. His tomb was abandoned. His reign almost erased. Akhenaten's revolution was both spiritual and political, a single deity replacing a pantheon, a monotheism before its time. It shocked the priests of Ammon and threatened the traditional order. His capital, Akhenaten, built anew in the desert, shone with promises of light and change. But when he died, his reforms unraveled like the fragile papyrus scrolls that recorded them. What of his tomb? Unlike the grand pyramids and elaborate burial chambers of other kings, Akhenaten's final resting place remains a mystery. Archaeologists have found fragments of a tomb near Amarna, his capital, but no full burial site has been confirmed. Some believe his remains were moved secretly, hidden to protect them from desecration. Others whisper that his tomb was deliberately left unfinished, a symbol of his broken reign. But Akhenaten was not alone. Throughout Egypt's layered history, other pharaohs faced the same fate. Smenkhkare, his possible successor, ruled briefly and mysteriously. His tomb is lost or unidentifiable. His name appears in fragmentary texts, often confused with others, and Tutankhamun, the boy king, restored the old gods, but died young, buried in haste. His tomb was small by royal standards, and some believe he was a puppet to the priests seeking to erase heresy. Heretics' tombs bear unusual marks, walls half-painted, scenes altered, names chiseled away with brutal precision. Some coffins show traces of recarving. The funerary texts are sometimes incomplete or replaced by strange iconography. One tomb near the Valley of the Kings reveals an unfinished depiction of the sun disk, a faded echo of the Aten's light, over a painted doorway. What did it mean to be buried as a heretic? The ancient Egyptians believed in Mat, harmony, truth, and order. To disrupt Mat was the gravest sin. The dead's heart was weighed against a feather to judge their purity. A heretic pharaoh risked the scales tipping against him. His name erased, his soul might wander, lost between worlds. To deny him a resting place was to deny him eternity. Yet, even in this, there was a strange reverence. The artisans who erased names did not destroy the entire tomb. They left much untouched, as if honoring a boundary between justice and mercy. The stones still hold secrets, traces of prayers whispered long ago, shadows of hymns half-dash remembered. And a quiet tomb discovered beneath the sands. The remains of a man who may have been a heretic pharaoh rest in obscurity. His identity unknown, his story untold. Yet the craftsmanship is exquisite, the materials precious. His legacy is silence, a silence heavier than stone. And what of the priests and scribes who carried out these erasures? They were both judges and mourners, wielders of sacred authority, tasked with shaping history. Their hands trembled as they struck the chisels, removing names from walls that once sang praises. But beneath their duty, perhaps a question lingered. Is forgetting truly justice? Or is it a second death? Tonight, as you close your eyes and the desert's cool breath brushes your skin, imagine the souls of these forgotten kings, their dreams disrupted, their names lost to time. Yet still, their spirits reach across millennia, fragile, unresolved, human dot, and in that fragile silence, a truth endures, that even heresy, even exile from memory, cannot extinguish the longing for eternity. So let us hold their stories gently, not as tales of shame, but as whispers of courage, for to challenge the gods is to touch the edges of the infinite, and to be remembered, even in silence, is to live forever. Beneath the blazing sun and endless sky, Egypt's desert seems silent and still, but beneath the stone a world stirs in shadow. Hidden chambers, secret passages, and unseen rituals lie folded like whispers in the labyrinths of tombs. These mysteries were meant to protect, to deceive, and to preserve the delicate balance between life and afterlife. They were the silent guardians of Pharaoh's souls, concealed from both robbers and time. The tomb was never merely a resting place. It was a fortress, a sacred temple, a portal. The walls bore magic, spells carved in ink and stone. The corridors were traps woven with precision. The chambers held symbols and objects charged with spiritual power. But among the most fascinating mysteries are the hidden spaces, rooms beyond rooms. Secret doors that slide open only when touched in the right way. Shafts that lead to darkness unexplored for millennia. In the Valley of the Kings, many tombs contain false doors painted on walls with such skill that even the trained eye can be deceived. These doors were meant to trick tomb robbers, leading them into dead ends or cursed traps. But some tombs have something more. Tunnels branching from burial chambers, sealed by stone slabs, untouched by human hands for thousands of years. Cryptic inscriptions warn of curses and divine retribution. Were these passages meant for the Pharaoh's spirit to escape, or to confuse the living? Consider the tomb of Pharaoh Amenhotep III, where archaeologists discovered a hidden corridor behind a false wall. It led to a chamber filled not with treasures but with strange objects, jars sealed with resin, bundles of linen inscribed with prayers, and amulets shaped like stars and eyes. The purpose of this secret chamber remains uncertain. Was it a sanctuary for the Pharaoh's soul, or a place to hide forbidden knowledge? In other tombs, like KV-62, the tomb of Tutankhamun, recent investigations have revealed possible hidden rooms behind walls long assumed solid. Ground-penetrating radar and new technologies suggest that beneath the known chambers may lie undiscovered spaces, perhaps belonging to other royals or secret treasures. The excitement of discovery is tempered by caution. The desert's silence is fragile, and every excavation risks disturbing ancient spirits. The rituals connected with these hidden spaces are equally mysterious. Texts speak of opening the doors of the sky, a ceremony where the soul of the Pharaoh ascended through hidden gateways. Priests would recite spells to awaken the gods and secure safe passage. These rites were secret, passed only to a few initiates, their words forbidden to the unworthy. Some scholars propose that hidden chambers were also places of initiation, where priests and royalty underwent spiritual transformation. Inside these spaces, dark and cool, they might have experienced symbolic death and rebirth, preparing to become divine. The walls themselves would bear witness to these sacred journeys, painted with images of stars, serpents, and the weighing of the heart. But many secrets remain locked away. Desert sands shift. Centuries of neglect hide entrances beneath dunes. Modern political challenges limit exploration. And so the tombs keep their whispers. In quiet moments. When the desert wind cools and stars begin to flicker, it feels as though the stones themselves breathe. They remember the hands that carved them, the voices that spoke prayers, the footsteps that passed in shadow, and perhaps somewhere behind sealed doors a Pharaoh's spirit waits. Patient, eternal. Tonight as you close your eyes and drift deeper, imagine yourself walking those hidden corridors. Feel the cool stone under your fingers, hear the faint echo of distant chants, and sense the delicate balance between life, death, and what lies beyond. The secrets beneath the stone invite you to listen, to wonder, and to dream. The story of Egypt is often told through the names of kings, but behind many of these rulers stood women of profound power, queens whose influence shaped dynasties and whose resting places hide stories of strength and silence. Their tombs lie often smaller, simpler and less adorned, sometimes lost to time, sometimes deliberately hidden. Yet within these quiet chambers, a different kind of royalty whispers, not just of power, but of resilience and grace. Queens in ancient Egypt were more than consorts. Some ruled as regents, others as pharaohs in their own right. Hatshepsut, Nefertiti, and Tuasret are names that shimmer like rare jewels in the dusty crown of history. Yet many queens remain nameless, their tombs undiscovered or stripped bare. The Valley of the Queens, a quieter neighbor to the Valley of the Kings, is home to many such resting places. Here, tombs are often smaller but no less sacred. They hold the bones and memories of women who bore heirs, shaped religious practice, and navigated palace intrigues. Among these tombs, many remain enigmatic. Some bear no names, their walls painted with faded images of goddesses and protective symbols. Others hold treasures but no inscriptions, their occupants cloaked in mystery. Why were some queens buried so quietly? In times of political upheaval, queens might be hidden to protect them from enemies. In other cases, power struggles meant their legacies were deliberately erased or overshadowed by male successors. Sometimes queens chose anonymity, seeking peace away from courtly conflict. The tomb of Queen Tai, mother of Akhenaten, remains one of the great mysteries. A powerful queen whose influence shaped a controversial reign, her burial place has never been definitively identified. Was she laid to rest in royal splendor or in quiet concealment? In the tomb of Queen Meritamen, we find traces of forgotten rituals, paintings depicting journeys through the afterlife, sacred animals guarding hidden doors, and spells whispered in hieratic script. Yet her name is faint, almost erased, as if even death could not grant full remembrance. Queens in the shadows teach us about the delicate balance of memory and silence. Their tombs, often overshadowed by their male counterparts, remind us that history is not only about kings, but also about those who stood beside them, shaping destinies behind the veil. Tonight, as you settle into quietude, imagine the soft flicker of candlelight in a queen's tomb, the rustle of linen wrappings, the gentle weight of a gold amulet resting on ancient skin. Feel the enduring presence of these women, silent, steadfast, eternal. In their quiet tombs. The queens await not forgotten, but resting ready to share their stories with those who listen with gentle hearts. Beneath the surface of every ancient tomb lies a language that does not speak in words. It is the language of symbols, the curled reed, the feather of Maat, the scarab carved mid-flight, the eye that watches even in darkness. Each one a key, each one a whisper, each one meant not for the living, but for the soul. To the ancient Egyptians, writing was not decoration, it was magic. And the symbols etched into tomb walls were not meant to be read, they were meant to work. These hieroglyphs were more than history. They were power, spoken by priests, sealed in papyrus, painted on coffins, chiseled onto limestone. Every symbol was part of a grand spell, meant to carry the dead safely through the underworld. Without them the soul could not journey. Without them the tomb was silent. And silence meant death everlasting. But in the tombs of the forgotten pharaohs, something strange happens. Some of these tombs are filled with symbols that don't quite match the standard spells. Some are unfinished, others are rearranged. Still, Others bear entirely unfamiliar glyphs, spirals, stars, interlocking lines, designs that resemble hieroglyphs, but do not appear in any known ritual texts. What do these symbols mean? And why were they placed in tombs whose names are lost? The pyramid texts, the earliest funerary writings, date back to the 5th dynasty. They later evolved into the coffin texts, and then the Book of the Dead, a guide through the afterlife. These writings included spells to ward off serpents, hymns to Ra, directions to the field of reeds. Every hieroglyph had to be drawn carefully. Even a single misplaced feather could render a spell useless. So when we enter a tomb filled with broken, altered, or unfamiliar symbols, it is not carelessness we see. It is secrecy. In one forgotten tomb near Deir el-Bahari, the walls bear no names, yet they are filled with a strange geometry, concentric circles spiraling toward a central star. Some believe this to be a map of the soul's journey, not through the standard underworld, but through some more esoteric path, known only to a few. These symbols are not in the Book of the Dead. They belong to something else. A lost branch of knowledge, perhaps, or a priestly order no longer remembered. Some tombs bear clusters of the Eye of Horus, repeated again and again, far more than in typical burial chambers. Others have scarabs drawn upside down, or snakes coiled in loops like knots. These were not mistakes. They were encoded messages. In a world where symbols held power, hiding meaning was its own form of protection. Was this a way to keep secrets safe from tomb robbers? Or were the symbols meant to be misunderstood, to preserve divine knowledge from unworthy eyes? In the tombs of the forgotten pharaohs, even the protective spells take on a different tone. Some show figures of the dead passing through not 12 but 13 gates. Others depict Ra not as a man with a sun disk, but as a sphere of pure white light surrounded by black fire. These are images not found in mainstream temples. They suggest visions, or perhaps revelations. And still, the absence of names remains central. Many of these tombs lack a cartouche, the royal seal that encircles a king's name. Without it, the symbols hang in the air like unsung melodies, beautiful but unnamed. Yet the rest of the tomb continues the story. Amulets shaped like ankhs and lotus blossoms, funerary boats painted with solar rays, ceilings adorned with the sky goddess Nut, her body arched over the stars. Who were these tombs made for? If the name was never recorded, then the symbols are all we have left. In some rare cases, archaeologists have found a single word scratched into the wall in faint ochre. Ankh, Seking. Power, energy, essence. Could this have been the identity of the soul entombed? Not a name, but a concept? Did some forgotten pharaohs choose to shed their royal titles in death, becoming something more abstract? A force, a light, a prayer made permanent in stone? The tomb of Seti I, though not forgotten, holds an example of how powerful symbols were believed to be. Its walls are covered in deep reliefs, including rare scenes from the mysterious Book of the Heavenly Cow, a myth about cosmic destruction and rebirth. If kings of full power were given such visual epics, what of those kings who vanished from memory? Could their stories have been preserved not in grandeur, but in code? Perhaps the forgotten symbols are not accidents. Perhaps they are veils meant to obscure, protect, or transcend identity. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, imagine the flicker of a torch passing over a stone wall carved with glyphs that no longer have translation. Imagine a priest's hand, steady, silent, painting a serpent in gold leaf on the inside of a coffin lid, not for beauty, not for ceremony, but because that symbol, that one curve of line, will guide the soul beyond the stars. The pharaoh may be forgotten, the name may be lost, but the symbols endure, and in them the soul still sings. A tomb is a promise that the soul will rest, that the body will remain untouched beneath stone and spell, forever whole, forever honored. But sometimes that promise is broken. Across the necropolises of Egypt, there are tombs where the sarcophagus is sealed, the spells are inscribed, the amulets arranged, and yet the body is gone. No linen-wrapped limbs, no skull resting in peace, no trace of the soul's vessel, only emptiness. The absence is jarring in a land obsessed with eternity, where entire cities were built for the dead. To find a tomb without a body is to stumble into a sacred void. The air seems colder, the silence deeper. It is not just the absence of flesh. It is the absence of meaning. Why would a pharaoh's final resting place be prepared in such precision, yet left without the one thing that mattered most? There are many theories. Some speak of tomb robbers, ruthless, desperate men who stripped burial chambers in the night, leaving only dust behind. Egypt's long history is filled with such desecrations. But even thieves rarely took everything. A scrap of cloth, a shard of bone. Something usually remains. In these tombs. Nothing does. In Kv 55, a tomb already wrapped in mystery, a single coffin was found, its inscription stripped, its body inside decayed and desecrated. The identity of the occupant is still debated. DNA hints at a royal connection, perhaps Akhenaten, but the clues are thin, the evidence worn. Nearby, in other tombs, archaeologists have found empty coffins laid with care, but no sign of remains. The bodies have been moved? Ancient Egyptians sometimes relocated burials to protect them. In times of turmoil, foreign invasion, civil war, priests retrieved royal mummies and hid them in caches far from their original tombs. The famous Deir el-Bahari cache held over 40 mummies, including kings like Seti I and Ramses II, buried again in secrecy to preserve them from looters. But most reburials left a trace, a papyrus, a priestly mark, a sealed dot in the tombs of the forgotten pharaohs. We find no such trail, no signs of rescue, just absence. Then there are the theories more arcane. Some believe certain pharaohs underwent spiritual transformation that required the removal or destruction of the physical body. Echoes of this belief exist in later religious traditions. The body as prison, the soul as flame. Could some kings have commanded that their bodies be scattered, burned, or dissolved in ritual? A few coffin inscriptions hint at such rites, a dispersal into Re-as light, or returning to the elements. But these texts are rare, their meaning debated. Still, in tombs where no body is found, yet the chamber sings with spiritual detail, we must consider, was this absence intentional? One such tomb, discovered near Abydos, contained a sarcophagus carved from a single block of alabaster. Around it funerary offerings lay undisturbed, jars of unguents, scarabs of lapis, a golden bird amulet. But inside, nothing. The sarcophagus was empty. No bones, no wrappings, not even dust. The ceiling clay showed no signs of disturbance, no breakage, no tampering. It was as if the body had never been placed inside or had vanished. In some interpretations, the body was never meant to remain Egyptian. Cosmology was rich with metaphors of flight, dissolution, rebirth. The soul had 5 parts, Ka, Ba, Ak, Ren, and Shoit, and while most rituals centered on preserving the Shia and Ba, some texts speak of the Ak transcending physical form entirely. Could a forgotten sect have believed that the truest pharaohs needed no body, that their tombs were vessels not for flesh, but for light? Such a belief would explain the strange symbolism found in some bodiless tombs, lotuses opening to the sky, stars descending like ladders, ceilings painted with maps of the Milky Way. Of course, there is always the possibility of deception. What if the tomb was never meant to house a body at all? Could it have been a decoy, a political illusion, a symbolic burial for a king who died abroad or vanished under suspicious circumstances? Tombs, after all, were propaganda as much as they were sanctuaries. A grand burial could stabilize a dynasty, calm a populace, or legitimize a fragile reign, even if the king himself had already crumbled into sand. And then there's the silence no theory can explain, the tomb where every ritual object is present, the book of the dead painted in careful hands, the food offerings fossilized in time, the sacred tools of embalming resting where they were last used, and yet the coffin is open and bare. These are the quietest places in all of Egypt, that not because they hold nothing, but because they hold a mystery no voice can answer. As you lie still tonight, imagine stepping into such a chamber. Feel the cool breath of ancient airbrush your skin, hear the echo of your footsteps on polished stone, and see at the end of the corridor a perfect sarcophagus waiting, open, empty, a presence that is absence, a silence that speaks louder than words, a story told not in what was left behind, but in what is no longer there. For sometimes what we do not find tells us more than what we do, and the missing body, the hollow coffin, the blank wall, they all speak of a deeper truth, that eternity, in its most sacred form, may lie beyond the grasp of flesh, that a forgotten pharaoh may still reign, not in body, but in mystery. In the careful world of archaeology, every discovery is expected to fit neatly into a timeline. Every stone, every seal, every artifact has its place, a context, a meaning, a date that roots it in Egypt's long, ordered history. But then there are the tombs that don't fit, tombs that seem older than they should be, tombs that contain objects from times yet to come, tombs that seem to rewrite what we thought we knew. They're the quiet anomalies of Egypt's sands, and their very existence asks the question no one dares to answer. What if history is incomplete? One such case lies beneath Saqqara, a tomb discovered in 2018, buried far deeper than surrounding structures. Its outer design matched those of the 5th dynasty, but inside, the wall carvings were far more advanced, intricate patterns typically found in tombs built centuries later. Even more puzzling, The sarcophagus was not rectangular, as was standard at the time, but oval, carved from a single piece of black granite, a style associated with much later dynasties, or not with dynastic Egypt at all. No name marked its lid. No body lay inside. Only a single gold ank resting on stone. Some scholars suggested it was a reused chamber. Others called it a ritual anomaly. But in the back of the tomb, a small sealed room was found, and within it, an object that seemed to belong nowhere, a miniature sky map etched into polished obsidian, marking constellations that did not align with the known Egyptian calendar. Who carved it? And how did they know the sky, as it would be thousands of years later? Another tomb found near the cliffs of El Minya bears an even stranger contradiction. The tomb's paintings depict solar barges sailing not along the Nile, but in the stars. One figure shows a pharaoh, unnamed, grasping what appears to be a circle of flame, surrounded by blue-skinned beings with elongated heads. Stylized? Perhaps but beneath the paint, ground-penetrating scans revealed another chamber, still sealed. Its construction predates the tomb above by nearly 400 years. 2 tombs, 2 timelines, stacked like whispers. There are tombs in the western desert with layouts that seem to mimic constellations, not geographic logic. In one case, a row of 5 burial chambers aligned perfectly with the belt of Orion on the spring solstice, a pattern more associated with the pyramids of Giza. But this tomb was built centuries before those pyramids rose. How did its builders know? And who were they honoring? The answers never come easily. Some archaeologists dismiss these finds as coincidence. Others quietly archive them, tucked into footnotes and sealed reports. Official narratives prefer clarity, but the sands do not always oblige. These impossible tombs persist, and in their silence they seem to ask us to listen more deeply. Consider the tomb of the unknown star priest, discovered near Luxor in 1904. Inside was a mural unlike any other, not gods or pharaohs, but a map, or what appeared to be one, of the solar system. 9 orbs around a central sun, with 2 smaller bodies looping around one of the outermost spheres. At the time, Pluto had not yet been discovered. Neither had its moons, and yet here it was, drawn with pigments still luminous. After millennia, no inscription, no explanation. Just a man in a leopard skin robe, pointing to the stars. There are tombs with tools that should not exist. In the tomb of Nisimun, excavated in 1923, a set of copper instruments was found, incredibly fine, too fine for common use. Under microscope, their edges were nearly laser smooth. Some researchers quietly speculated that they had been used not for construction, but for sound. Tuning forks, resonators, devices meant to interact with vibration. But vibration of what? Stone, the soul, the stars? Some tombs, deep, sealed, silent, have no entrances. They were discovered by accident, through collapses or radar scans. No stairs lead to them. No shafts descend. It's as if they were placed not from above, but from beneath, born fully formed like a seed growing upward through rock. In one such tomb, found in the cliffs near Dendera, the walls curve inward like a shell. The acoustics are perfect. Every whisper echoes back with a strange harmonic clarity. No pharaoh's name appears here, Only a single phrase repeated dozens of times, to be remembered by the sky, not the earth. It is tempting to explain these anomalies away, to say the tombs were reused, the data misread, the symbols metaphorical. But then again, what if they're exactly what they appear to be? What if some tombs were not meant only for burial, but for transmission? What if some pharaohs, priests, or unknown sages created resting places not for the past, but for the future? In these impossible tombs we feel something else. Not grief, not worship, but intention. The sense that something was placed there to last, to wait, to awaken. Perhaps not all tombs were made for the dead. Perhaps some were messages, carved in stone for eyes not yet open. Tonight, as your mind softens and your thoughts grow quiet, imagine one of these impossible tombs. No tour guides, no lights, just darkness and still air. You descend not through time, but through mystery. And at the center, not a coffin, not a king, but a question written in a language we've yet to learn. A question meant not for the past, but for you. Tucked away on the west bank of the Nile, beneath the ever-watchful gaze of the Theban hills, lies dear El Medina, a village like no other. Here, sheltered from the scorching sun and the politics of Pharaoh's court, lived the artisans who crafted eternity itself. The men and women of dear El Medina were the unseen hands behind Egypt's greatest tombs, the painters and masons who transformed cold stone into vivid stories of gods, kings, and the afterlife. Their village was a place of secrets and solidarity. Walls whispered tales of daily toil, laughter, sorrow, and whispered fears. Here craftsmen traded stories beneath flickering oil lamps, passing knowledge through generations. Unlike the kings they served, these artisans did not seek immortality in monuments. Their legacy was quieter, found in the brush strokes on walls, and the inscriptions that only careful eyes could read. In the narrow lanes of dear El Medina, graffiti scratched into plaster reveals much. Messages of love, complaints of food shortages, prayers for protection, fragments of lives preserved against time's erasure. One wall holds the name of Sennacherib, a master painter whose tomb would one day be discovered with colors still vibrant after 3 millennia. His art speaks softly of family, faith, and the hope of an eternal journey, but the whispering walls also tell of dangers. The artisans worked under watchful eyes, under pressure to complete royal tombs in secret. Theft was a constant threat, both from outsiders and sometimes from within. Documents found in dear El Medina reveal that some artisans were accused of tomb robbery, a crime punished with exile or death. Yet, many believed their work was sacred, a divine calling to guide kings safely into the afterlife. The tombs they built were more than burial places. They were canvases of hope and fear, maps of the underworld, and spells frozen in color and stone. Every stroke held meaning, every symbol was chosen with care. Yet, not all their secrets were meant to be found. Some tombs at dear El Medina have hidden chambers, sealed passages, or painted over doors, deliberate concealments meant to protect the dead from desecration. These hidden features whisper of ancient fears, that death was not the end, but a passage fraught with peril. The artisan's faith was complex. They believed their work ensured the pharaoh's resurrection, but they also knew their own fates. were entwined with the tombs they built. Their village was a liminal space between life and death, history and mystery. As you listen tonight, imagine walking the dusty lanes of Deir el-Medina, hearing the murmur of voices long silenced, but never forgotten. Imagine the steady hands that painted stars on ceilings, the eyes that studied the mysteries of death, the hearts that hoped their work would last beyond all time. In the quiet stone of their tombs, the artisans speak still, a whisper carried on the desert wind. In the hushed stillness of the tomb, amidst painted walls and silent shadows, lie objects imbued with power tools not merely of craft, but of transformation. Each piece, each artifact, is a fragment of a ritual language spoken between the living and the divine, between flesh and eternity. These sacred tools are the Pharaoh's companions on the journey beyond. Carved wands of ebony and ivory, amulets shaped like scarabs and lotuses, jars of fragrant oils, blades etched with hieroglyphs. They fill the burial chambers with a quiet symphony of meaning. Each was chosen with intent, a symbol, an instrument of protection, healing, and rebirth. The ancient Egyptians believed that the journey through death was perilous. The soul faced trials, weighed by gods, and confronted by monsters in the underworld. The sacred tools were talismans, keys to unlock gates, weapons to ward off darkness, and mirrors to reflect truth. Among the most revered were the Was scepter, symbolizing power and dominion, and the Ankh, the key of life. These symbols appear again and again, etched into coffins, held by painted gods, or fashioned into jewelry. To hold or be buried with these was to carry a promise, the promise of eternal life. In the tombs of forgotten pharaohs, these tools sometimes take on strange forms. Amulets crafted from unusual materials, blades with symbols not found in other tombs, jars sealed with mysterious resins. These variations suggest secret rites, perhaps lost to time, or rites meant only for a chosen few. One jar found in the lesser-known burial chamber contained a fragrant oil, still preserved in resin. Chemical analysis reveals compounds from distant lands, myrrh and frankincense mingled with unknown herbs, hinting at trade, ritual, and a sacred recipe lost to memory. The tools also tell of the craftsman's devotion. Many were made with exquisite skill, carved by master hands in Deir el-Medina, polished, smooth, decorated with gold leaf. They were gifts to the gods and guards of the dead. Some artifacts hold more enigmatic power. Mirrors, for example, were believed to reveal not just reflections, but the soul's true form. When placed in the tomb, they could guide the spirit safely through illusions and shadows. In one forgotten tomb, a blade inscribed with unusual hieroglyphs was found beside a skeleton. Its edges were strangely worn, as if used not in battle, but in ritual. The inscriptions hinted at cutting bonds, not flesh, but chains of the spirit. These sacred tools, silent and still, speak to us across millennia. They remind us that death was not an end, but a passage guarded, guided, and sacred. Tonight, as you close your eyes and drift toward sleep, imagine the Pharaoh's hands resting gently on these tools, feeling their cool smoothness, hearing the quiet prayers carved into their surfaces. In these objects, the eternal journey begins, and the forgotten pharaohs whisper their secrets once more. In the heart of Egypt's tombs, long after the incense has faded and the torches have died, something still lingers, an echo, not of voices, not of footsteps, but something older, a hum, a resonance, a memory of sound itself. The ancients knew what modern visitors often forget. That sound could shape the soul's journey. It could awaken gods. It could protect the dead. And in the most sacred tombs, it could open the gates to eternity. The walls were not just painted, they were tuned in many burial chambers. The placement of the sarcophagus, the curvature of the ceiling, the materials used for walls and floors were not purely artistic or architectural. They were chosen for sound. Whispers could travel strangely through these spaces. The quietest chant might seem to return amplified, as if the tomb were breathing it back. Priests conducted ceremonies of opening the mouth in these spaces, chants, songs and rhythmic phrases that symbolically restored the senses to the deceased. The spells were intoned in sacred tones, vibrating through the limestone, awakening the soul's 5 parts, the ka, the ba, the ren, the shoit, and the akh. Each vibration had a purpose. Each word was a step in a spiritual symphony. In the tomb of Thutmose III, high in the cliffs of the Valley of the Kings, the chamber walls curve inward slightly, forming an acoustic dome. Some researchers believe that this curvature allowed voices, particularly chants, to carry farther, deeper, echoing back with soft distortion, as though the tomb itself were responding. And what was that response? To the priests, it was the voice of the gods, but in some forgotten tombs this principle seems exaggerated. One chamber beneath the western cliffs produces an eerie harmonic when a voice speaks in its center. The tone resonates in the walls. For up to 12 seconds low, hollow, like a deep breath that never ends. When modern sound engineers tested the frequency, they found it aligned with vibrations known to produce calm or altered states of consciousness. Could these tombs have been designed to induce trance? To ease the spirit from life into afterlife, not just through symbols, but through sound? The ancient Egyptians revered music. Harps, flutes, sistrums, and drums were played during sacred rites and funerals. Songs were offerings. Rhythm was prayer. And silence. Silence was not absence. It was reverence. Certain tombs seem designed to hold that reverent silence perfectly. In the tomb of the noble Ramos, unfinished and rarely visited, the air is so still that one's heartbeat feels amplified. Any sound, a step, a breath feels like an intrusion. Some researchers believe the tomb's architecture creates a subtle vacuum effect, removing ambient noise. It's not quiet. It's silence curated. And in that silence, thoughts become thunderous. Consider the tomb of a priest-musician found near Abydos, painted with scenes of sound. Not battle, not agriculture, not offerings, but harps, dancers, notes inscribed on papyri now too brittle to read. Buried with him were several instruments carefully preserved and a curved piece of crystal, thought by some to be a resonator. Did he believe he could carry music into the afterlife? Did he believe sound itself could open gates? Not all echoes are physical. Some belong to memory. The artisans of Deir el-Medina left behind poems and songs scrawled in margins, hidden in the stone. Some wrote of their favorite chants, passed down from temple to tomb, from generation to generation. These were not hymns to gods, but songs of longing for home, for light, for peace. In their echoes, we hear the most human desire, to be remembered And then there are the tombs that still whisper. Tourists have reported odd harmonic sounds without source, murmurs that rise then vanish, the rustle of fabric, a single tone that lingers just at the edge of hearing. Most explanations suggest airflow, shifting stone, psychological suggestion. But the priests would have told us otherwise. They would have said, the tomb is speaking back. Tonight, as you lay your head on your pillow, let the world grow quiet, not in fear, not in absence, but in sacred stillness. Imagine standing in a chamber of stone, where a single note sung by a priest still resonates, centuries later, too soft for ears but not for the soul. In that soundless vibration, a forgotten Pharaoh sleeps and dreams and listens. There is a hush that falls over those who enter the tombs of ancient kings, a silence not born of all alone, but of something older, something colder. It is the silence of warning, a whisper passed down across generations, a superstition etched into memory, if not into stone. The curse. To disturb a tomb is to violate a sanctuary. The Egyptians believed the tomb was a home for the soul, a house of eternity, sealed not just with stone but with intention. It was sacred. It was guarded. And those who crossed its threshold uninvited might not return unchanged. The most famous tale comes from the tomb of Tutankhamun. In 1922, when Howard Carter's team pried open its sealed door, the world gasped. Gold, jewels, splendor unspoiled by time. But soon another story began to unfold, slower, darker. Lord Carnarvon, the expedition's financier, died shortly. After the tomb was opened, a mosquito bite turned septic. Lights reportedly failed across Cairo at the moment of his passing. His dog, thousands of miles away, howled and collapsed dead. Coincidence or consequence? The press seized on the tale. Death comes on wings to he who enters the tomb of a pharaoh, read one headline. More deaths followed, sudden illnesses, accidents, mysterious fates. Not all were directly involved with the tomb, but enough to make the world wonder and to fear. But this idea, the tomb curse, did not begin in the 20th century. On tomb walls in Saqqara and Abydos, faint inscriptions warn intruders. One reads, "As for anyone who shall disturb this tomb, may the crocodile be against him in the water, and the snake against him on land. May the hippo be against him on the river, and the scorpion on the sand." These were not idle threats. They were prayers, magical deterrents meant to protect the soul within and punish those without. Were these curses symbolic? Warnings of divine protection? Or did the Egyptians truly believe that sacred spells could extend into death, reaching beyond the veil to strike? The tomb builders thought so. In Deir el-Medina, workers reportedly invoked protective spells over tomb doors. Some even etched personal curses into bricks or plaster. One reads, "I am the flame that burns. He who harms this place shall burn without fire, bleed without wound, and wander without name." The power of a curse lay not just in magic, but in belief. Egyptians believed words had force. Spoken or carved, they became heka, sacred energy. To speak a curse aloud was to launch it into the world like an arrow. To inscribe it in a tomb was to make it eternal. And so when modern explorers entered these spaces, often with little regard for ritual or reverence, They may have triggered something more than physical disturbance, even if the curses weren't. Real the fear was, and fear, like belief, has its own power. Some Egyptologists dismiss the curse tales as superstition, the result of infection, stress, coincidence. After all, many members of Carter's team lived long lives. But there's another layer. The idea that certain tombs, particularly those of forgotten or erased pharaohs, may have been deliberately cursed, not just to protect treasure, but to protect truth. In a lesser-known tomb near Dashur, a series of painted spells ends abruptly. The final image shows a figure with no face, surrounded by flames. Beneath it, scrawled in faint ochre, "He who seeks what was hidden shall see what should not be seen." The tomb was resealed shortly after its discovery. Some say workers refused to return. Others say they were told not to. What lay inside was never made public. There is also the question of the priests. Some burial priests belonged to secret orders trained not only in rites of preservation, but in protection. Their task was to shield the dead, to invoke spells, traps, even misdirection. In their hands, a tomb became a puzzle, or a snare. Could the curse be part of their legacy? Could some tombs still be watching? One theory proposes that curses weren't always meant for thieves, but for rivals. In times of dynastic instability, when pharaohs fell out of favor or were erased from history, their tombs might be sealed with vengeful spells, not to protect their wealth, but to punish those who had stolen their name, their throne, their memory. A king wronged in life might seek justice in death, and so a curse was born, not of malice, but of longing, the longing to be remembered. The cry of a soul trapped between this world and the next, what we call a curse, might simply be a plea. Tonight, as you close your eyes and listen to the hush of the night, imagine the door to a tomb cracking open. The air is still. Dust dances in the torchlight. And somewhere just past the threshold, a presence lingers. Not angry, not cruel, just waiting for respect, for remembrance, for peace. The tomb builder's curse may not be a spell cast in vengeance. It may be a voice in the dark, whispering, "Let me sleep, let me be sacred, let me be eternal." There is a silence deeper than death. It is not the silence of the grave, but of absence, a name carved out, a face chiseled away, a memory deliberately drowned beneath time. This is not decay. It is ersure. In ancient Egypt. To be forgotten was the greatest punishment of all. They called it damnatio memoria, the damnation of memory. To strike a name from the stone was to condemn a soul. For in the Egyptian view of eternity, existence continued only so long as the name was spoken, remembered, written. Without a name there was no identity. Without identity, no afterlife. To destroy a name was to kill a soul a second time. And so began the silent wars between pharaohs, not in the streets, not in battlefields, but on temple walls and within tombs, a face chipped away, a cartouche carefully scraped off, an image defaced with such precision that even gods would turn their eyes. One of the most infamous victims of this ritual erasure was Akhenaten, the heretic king, he who closed the temples of Amun, who raised a single god, Atan, above all others. When he died, the priesthood struck back. His name was removed from king lists, his statues broken. his tomb abandoned and cursed by silence. Even his city, Akhetaten, was swallowed by sand. And yet, the stone remembers Dot in the tombs of workers. In fragments unearthed from desert winds, his face returns, elongated, serene, reaching toward the sun disk. The pharaoh they tried to forget still lingers, quietly alive in the cracks of history. Later kings, too, feared what memory could do. Hatshepsut, the great female pharaoh, ruled with power and grace. She built towering obelisks, her name inscribed in grandeur. But after her death, her stepson Thutmose III had her images erased, not destroyed in fury, but carefully removed like a secret undone, not to deface, but to deny, as if she had never existed. In her tomb, some cartouches were left half erased, the chisel work abandoned. Was it hesitation, mercy, or the work of scribes unwilling to complete the crime? Her statues were buried, not broken. Even in erasure the hand of history trembled. Tomb robbers came for gold, but kings came for silence. To destroy a predecessor's legacy was to replace it, to rewrite time. The tombs tell this quietly. Wall scenes repainted, old inscriptions plastered over, names altered by the smallest change of a sign, a feather turned into a flame, a reed re-angled, a god replaced. But stone is stubborn. In the tomb of Seti I, a section shows signs of revision, figures painted again and again, layers peeling back like a palimpsest. One god is drawn in triplicate, as though someone could not decide which face belonged. Beneath the topmost layer, traces of a name thought lost, a pharaoh no longer recorded in king lists, a ghost ruler, a memory nearly severed. Why such effort to erase? It was not always hate. Often it was fear. The dead could rise. In power, their cults could become threats. Their policies, unpopular in life, could return as heresy. And so, kings reshaped history to secure their own legacies, what they could not defeat in life. They buried under silence, but the tombs resist. Beneath plaster, erased names reappear under infrared light. Faces defaced by hammer still show their outlines in ultraviolet scans. Modern archaeology has become a form of resurrection, bringing back not just artifacts, but identities. In a remote tomb near Amarna, a set of statues was found buried in sand, each one beheaded, each name scratched off. But among them, a single statue remained intact, hidden in a sealed alcove. It bore the name of a woman once thought minor. Now, scholars believe she may have ruled, perhaps as co-regent or even in her own right. History had tried to forget her, but her tomb had not. The deeper message is quiet but enduring. Power is fleeting, but memory is persistent. And stone, though fragile, listens longer than empires. Tonight, as the world slows and stillness wraps around you like linen, imagine standing in a temple corridor. The walls once told a clear story. Now faces are missing. Names are gone. But the silence is not empty. It hums. With what was hidden, with what refuses to be lost. The pharaohs tried to erase each other, but history, like the soul, endures. In the long, winding river of Egypt's history, there flow currents of light and also shadows. Among the great kings whose names echo through temples and scrolls, there are others, kings without names, ghosts whose stories were never fully told, whose identities slip through the cracks of time. They rest in tombs unmarked or hidden, their faces erased or never carved. Their legacies are puzzles without solutions, whispers and silence. To be a king without a name is to be lost not only to history, but to eternity itself. Yet their tombs remain silent monuments of stone and shadow. In these darkened chambers, faint traces survive: a scarred wall, a broken statue, a faded inscription barely visible beneath layers of dust and plaster. Each fragment is a whisper proof of a ruler who once breathed, dreamed, and ruled. Why were these kings forgotten? Some vanished before their reigns truly began, young rulers, caught in the whirl of political strife or sudden death. Others were deliberately erased, victims of the silent wars waged by their successors. But even those who sought to bury them could not silence stone. One such figure appears in the violent wars waged by their successors. But even those who sought to bury them could not silence stone. Valley of the Kings, known only as the Unknown King. His tomb was discovered nearly empty, yet the artistry suggested a royal stature. No name was found, no cartouche, just a chamber echoing with secrets. Archaeologists believe this king ruled briefly during a time of great upheaval, perhaps during the decline of the new kingdom. His identity remains a mystery wrapped in dust. Elsewhere, in Abydos, fragments of a steely tell of a pharaoh whose name was carefully chiseled away. The surrounding inscriptions speak of achievements and battles, but the central figure is lost. It is as if history attempted to write him out, to erase his presence, yet could not fully do so. These kings without names remind us of a truth ancient and profound. History is not only the story of those remembered, but also of those forgotten. They dwell in shadows, but they remain. In some tombs, the absence of a name was intentional, a ritual blankness, symbolizing a king's transition into the divine beyond human memory. To become a god was to shed mortal identity. Could the missing names be a sign of ascension rather than erasure? Archaeological techniques, infrared imaging, spectral analysis, and careful excavation now peel back layers of time, revealing hidden inscriptions beneath plaster and paint. In one tomb, a faint name emerged, one never before recorded, a king whose reign was brief, but whose burial was elaborate. It was a whisper resurrected. The kings without names teach us to listen carefully. Their stories are not lost. They are waiting in silence, waiting beneath stone, waiting in the spaces between words. Tonight, as sleep draws near and shadows lengthen, imagine wandering through a tomb where the name is missing, but the presence is strong. A king whose voice is a breath on the wall, a shadow in the candlelight. In their silence, they speak to us not with words, but with memory. They remind us that even forgotten kings have tales to tell. Beneath the shifting sands and the relentless sun, Egypt guards secrets buried deeper than most imagine. Hidden burial chambers forgotten, lost, and sometimes deliberately concealed lie silent and untouched, waiting patiently for the world above to remember their existence. These chambers are not mere tombs. They are vaults of mystery holding treasures, truths, and perhaps even dangers beyond our understanding. The desert is both a protector and a deceiver. Storms of sand bury entrances, erasing pathways. Centuries of dust settle like a shroud. Time's slow breath seals doors with silence. And yet, beneath this stillness, some chambers pulse with the presence of the past. Some lost burial chambers are discovered by accident. A crack in a cliff reveals a hidden doorway. A scan picks up shadows where none should be. But many remain undiscovered, locked behind rock, sand, or secrecy. One such chamber, found in the cliffs near Luxor, defied expectations. It was sealed, with an intricate system of false walls and hidden corridors, designed to mislead tomb robbers and protect the pharaoh's final resting place. The layout was unlike any other, complex and labyrinthine, a puzzle crafted to guard not only treasure, but knowledge. Inside, archaeologists found objects that puzzled experts, vessels inscribed with unknown symbols, statues of creatures not described in any known mythology, and scrolls written in a script still undeciphered. The chamber whispered of a chapter of history still unread. Elsewhere, near the step pyramid of Djoser, a lost burial chamber was discovered beneath layers of debris. Its walls, though cracked, bore murals depicting celestial maps, star patterns that aligned with rare cosmic events. This suggested a connection between burial rites and astronomy more profound than previously thought. Some lost chambers contain evidence of hurried burials, pharaohs or nobles hastily entombed in times of crisis, leaving traces of struggle, secrecy, and fear. These hurried tombs carry an urgency, a tension frozen in stone, reminding us that death was not always a peaceful journey. Not all lost chambers are royal. Many belong to forgotten nobles, priests and artisans, people who shaped Egypt's spiritual landscape, but were never recorded in grand history. Their tombs are smaller, but no less rich with stories. Each lost burial chamber invites us to imagine what stories lie behind the sealed doors. What truths are buried beneath layers of sand and shadow? As your thoughts drift tonight, picture yourself standing before a hidden tomb. The air is cool and still. No light penetrates beyond your torch. The silence is thick, yet alive. With every step forward, you cross the boundary between known and unknown, between history and mystery. Between the past and the whisper of eternity. In these lost burial chambers, the secrets of forgotten pharaohs wait patiently, holding their stories in quiet trust. And one day they may speak again. In the quiet embrace of Egypt's tombs, art breathes not as decoration, but as a sacred language. Each brush stroke, each carved line is a prayer cast into stone, a story meant to transcend time and death. The tomb was more than a resting place. It was a gateway, a sanctuary, and a canvas where life and afterlife entwined in colors and symbols. Walls tell tales not only of the deceased, but of the cosmos, of gods sailing celestial rivers, of stars guiding the soul's journey, of eternal cycles of birth and rebirth. Every hue carried meaning. Blue was the sky and the Nile. Gold, the flesh of the gods. Green, rebirth and fertility. Painters and sculptors of old Egypt were masters of both craft and spirituality. Their hands moved with reverence, knowing that each image might hold the power to protect or empower the soul for eternity. They painted with pigments derived from minerals and plants, carefully prepared to endure millennia. Their tools were simple, but their vision profound. Among the most striking motifs are the scenes of the Book of the Dead, spells and incantations, illustrated to guide the departed through the underworld's trials. These images are not merely artistic. They are sacred texts in visual form, a roadmap for the soul's passage. The weighing of the heart scene appears frequently, an eternal judgment where the heart of the deceased is weighed against the feather of Mat, symbol of truth and balance. The artist's brush captures the tension of this moment, where destiny hangs in delicate balance. Some tombs boast ceilings painted deep blue and studded with golden stars, recreating the night sky itself. This cosmic canopy reminds the soul of its place in the universe and its hope of rebirth among the stars. But not all art is serene. Some tombs reveal turbulent scenes, battles with demons, serpents devouring the unworthy, gods in fierce confrontation. These images acknowledge death's dangers, the obstacles that must be overcome. Intriguingly, in tombs of forgotten pharaohs, the art sometimes takes unexpected forms, abstract symbols, geometric patterns, or hybrid creatures unknown in mainstream Egyptian mythology. That these may represent secret knowledge or personal beliefs, hinting at spiritual paths hidden from the public eye. The artisans who created these works often left subtle signatures, small marks, hidden faces, or personal prayers woven into the imagery. These whispers of humanity connect us across the centuries, reminding us that behind every tomb was a living, breathing soul. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, envision a tomb's painted chamber. Let your eyes trace the flowing lines, the vibrant colors, the silent stories. Feel the reverence folded into every detail. In the art of eternal rest, life and death are entwined in beauty. And in that beauty, the soul finds its way home. Behind every tomb's silent stone stood a circle of devoted guardians, the priests. More than mere caretakers, they were the keepers of sacred rites, the interpreters of divine will, and the silent sentinels of secrets whispered only in shadow. These priests were the invisible thread binding life to afterlife, tradition to eternity. In hushed temples and dimly lit sanctuaries, they performed rituals meant to awaken the spirit and protect the resting soul. Their chants wove through corridors of time, a continuous thread of power and prayer. Their hands touched not just tombs, but the very fabric of belief. They were masters of ritual, knowledge keepers of spells and incantations from the Book of the Dead, skilled in the language of symbols, gestures, and sacred objects. Their role was both spiritual and practical, guiding souls safely into the afterlife and preserving the pharaoh's memory on earth. But the priests were also guardians of secrets, forbidden knowledge passed down through generations, hidden beneath layers of scripture and stone, secrets of death and rebirth, of gods unseen, and of paths that led beyond the visible world. Their lives were cloaked in mystery. They often lived within temple complexes or near necropolises, their daily existence intertwined with the cycles of the sun, the moon, and the stars. Their knowledge was sacred, passed orally and through cryptic texts, designed to keep outsiders at bay. Some priests belonged to powerful orders, hierophants, who held sway over both religious and political realms. Their influence shaped not only burial rites, but the very architecture of tombs. Their wisdom guided the placement of chambers, the choice of symbols, and even the design of secret passages meant to protect the dead. The priests were also protectors, warding off tomb robbers with curses, magical traps, and protective spells. Some even inscribed warnings into the very walls. Their words, a blend of fear and reverence. Their power was as much in the unseen as in the visible. Within their ranks were priest-musicians, whose chants and hymns created sacred soundscapes thought to awaken the gods and soothe the departed. Their melodies still echo faintly in the stone, a haunting reminder of a world where sound was a bridge between realms. Yet for all their power, priests were mortal. They lived in the shadow of the kings they served, sometimes caught in political intrigue, other times erased from history themselves. Their secrets often died with them, locked in tombs or lost in the sands of time. Tonight, as darkness wraps softly around you, imagine the silent presence of these guardians. Feel their watchful eyes beyond the veil, their whispered prayers folded into the night air. They are the unseen keepers not only of tombs, but of memory, belief, and the delicate threads that weave life to eternity. At the heart of every tomb lies a quiet doorway, the final threshold between worlds. It is the gate the Pharaoh must cross to leave the world of the living and enter the eternal realm. This passage is not sudden. It is a journey guided by prayers, spells, and the silent hope of rebirth. The ancient Egyptians believed the soul traveled through many stages after death, through dark waters, guarded gates, and celestial halls where gods judged and welcomed. Tomb was a vessel for this journey, a sanctuary prepared with care to hold the body and spirit until the voyage began. Passing through the threshold was a rite of passage. The Pharaoh became more than a man. He became a god, transformed by ritual and belief. Each step forward echoed with sacred words from the Book of the Dead, illuminating the path ahead. The corridor beyond the burial chamber often narrowed, a symbolic journey through darkness. Paintings depicted the trials of the soul monsters to evade, riddles to solve, blessings to receive. The Pharaoh's heart, weighed against the feather of Mat, decided his fate. But the threshold was not only a spiritual border, it was a space of reflection, a liminal place where the living and dead briefly meet. Priests performed rituals here, whispering chants meant to ease passage and ensure safe arrival. Archaeologists have uncovered traces of offerings left at tomb entrances, food, flowers, and small tokens, gifts from the living to honor and sustain the dead on their journey. These acts bridged worlds, tying the present to the past in a sacred bond. Some tombs show evidence of multiple passages, doors sealed and reopened, corridors added or blocked. These changes suggest that the journey was not fixed, but adaptable, responding to shifting beliefs, politics, and mysteries yet to be uncovered. In the quiet stillness of the tomb, one can almost hear the echo of footsteps, soft and steady, crossing from one life into the next. The threshold is not an end, but a beginning. As you close your eyes tonight, imagine standing before that silent door. Imagine the gentle weight of eternity pressing close, and then the slow, serene crossing. The journey beyond the threshold is the oldest story of all, a story of transformation, hope, and the endless dance between life and death. Sleep now, wrapped in the timeless embrace of this final passage, and dream of the Pharaohs who walk softly beyond the stones, forever journeying through the stars. Long after the last stone was laid, and the final seal was set. The tombs of Egypt continue to whisper. Not in words we can hear, but in feelings, shadows, and the quiet stirrings of memory that ripple through time. These whispers remind us that history is never truly silent. The forgotten pharaohs, once buried beneath layers of sand and secrecy, reach out through the ages. Their tombs, cracked and worn, still hold fragments of stories, fragments that speak of power, faith, and the fragile human desire to be remembered. Each faded painting, each scarred statue, is a voice. Archaeologists continue to listen, their work a delicate conversation with the past. With every discovery, a new thread of the ancient tapestry is revealed, new questions, new wonders. Some tombs remain sealed, guarding secrets still too delicate or dangerous to unfold. But perhaps the greatest mystery is not in the artifacts or inscriptions, but in the spaces between the silences, the erasures, the shadows where history fades and legend begins. What lies beyond what we can see? What truths are held in the stillness? The tombs invite us to reflect on our own stories, how we remember, how we forget, and what it means to leave a legacy. In their quiet endurance, they teach us about the passage of time and the human spirit's yearning for immortality. Tonight, as sleep gathers softly around you, listen for those whispers. They come not as voices, but as feelings of awe, wonder, and gentle reverence. Let the ancient stones cradle your dreams. Let the forgotten kings guide you through the night. And know that in the vast river of time, their stories flow on quiet, eternal, and waiting. Time flows like the Nile, steady, relentless, carrying the memories of centuries along its banks. Yet for every name carved in stone, there are countless others lost to oblivion, swallowed by shifting sands and forgotten by history's tide. Memory and oblivion dance in endless rhythm, one shaping the other. The tombs of Egypt stand as monuments to this delicate balance. They preserve the stories of pharaohs and priests, kings and queens, but also bear witness to erasures, lost names, and silent spaces where history has slipped away. Each tomb is both a vessel of remembrance and a reminder of impermanence. The ancient Egyptians understood this well. Their elaborate burial rites, their devotion to preservation, sprang from a profound desire to defy oblivion, to anchor identity beyond the fleeting now. Yet they also accepted that forgetting was part of life's cycle, that even the greatest kings might fade. Inscriptions in some tombs speak poetically of this truth, of the heart's journey through darkness and light, of the soul's passage beyond memory to a place of peace. These writings remind us that to be remembered is a gift, but to rest beyond remembrance can also be a kind of grace. Modern explorers and scholars strive to recover what was lost, to breathe life back into forgotten names and faded faces. Each discovery is an act of resurrection, turning dust into story, silence into voice. Yet with every uncovering, there is also the awareness of what remains hidden, perhaps forever. The dance between memory and oblivion invites us to reflect on our own lives, what we choose to remember, what we forget, and how we might be remembered when our own time passes. It is a universal story, whispered through the ages. Tonight, as you settle into sleep's embrace, imagine the slow, gentle river of time flowing through the tombs. Listen to its song, a melody of remembrance and release. Let the mysteries of memory and oblivion lull you into dreams where past and present entwine softly, and may the dance of time carry you peacefully. Through the night, in the stillness of their tombs, the Pharaohs did not simply sleep, they dreamed. Their dreams were not fleeting shadows, but vivid journeys through realms unseen, guided by gods and guarded by spirits. For ancient Egyptians, the afterlife was a place of vision, a world shaped by hope, fear, and sacred imagination. The walls of many tombs are painted with scenes that resemble dreams, floating boats, sailing celestial rivers, gardens bursting with eternal bloom, and palaces of light built for eternity. These images are windows into the Pharaoh's spiritual landscape, where life and death intertwine in eternal dance. Priests and artists worked to capture these visions, not as mere decoration, but as spiritual maps guiding the soul through peril and promise. The dreams were both personal and collective, woven from myth, ritual, and individual belief. Some texts speak of the field of reeds, a paradise where the soul lives in harmony, free from pain and suffering. It is a place shaped as much by hope as by the gods' blessing. In dreams, the Pharaoh walked these fields, surrounded by familiar faces in endless skies. Visions also carried warnings of monsters lurking in dark waters, gates barred by fearsome guardians, and challenges to overcome. The afterlife was not simple rest. It was a journey of transformation. Interestingly, dreams were believed to be moments when the living could glimpse the divine. Pharaohs sought visions during their lifetimes through ritual and meditation to prepare for the final voyage. The boundary between dreaming and dying was fluid. Even today, as you drift to sleep, you might sense the same delicate boundary, the place where consciousness softens and mystery blooms. The Pharaoh's dreams echo still, carried in the quiet between breaths. Tonight, let your mind sail on those celestial rivers. Imagine the gardens of the afterlife where the impossible feels real. And know that in dreams, the journey never truly ends. There is a silence that lives within the tombs of the forgotten pharaohs, a silence not of emptiness, but of profound presence. It is the sacred hush that comes when time folds gently around stone, when the world slows and breathes in quiet reverence. This silence holds the weight of eternity. Within these chambers, where sunlight no longer reaches, stillness reigns supreme. Dust settles like soft snow on carved walls in painted scenes, sealing stories in gentle pause. Here, life's noise fades, leaving only whispers of the past. The silence is not simply absence, it is a presence. It carries the echo of footsteps long gone, the murmur of prayers once spoken, the shimmer of dreams once dreamed. It holds the essence of souls who once walked beneath Egypt's blazing sun, now resting beyond time's reach. Archaeologists entering these spaces often speak of the silence as a living thing, a breath held, a moment suspended. It invites reflection, awe, and humility. The sacred silence is the final gift of the tomb, the place where the Pharaoh's journey ends. And true rest begins. It is a sanctuary beyond words, beyond time, beyond memory. Yet, even in silence, the tombs speak. They tell stories not with sound, but with stillness. They remind us that some mysteries are meant to be felt, not solved, to be honored, not disturbed. As night deepens and your own world softens into quiet, imagine yourself surrounded by this sacred silence, Let it cradle your thoughts and ease your breath. In this silence, find peace. In this stillness, find rest. In the gentle darkness, know that the forgotten pharaohs sleep, held forever in time's tender embrace. In the stillness after centuries, the tombs of forgotten pharaohs whisper an eternal echo, a soft reverberation that travels beyond stone, beyond time, beyond memory. Their legacy is not only in gold or grandeur, but in the quiet stories carried on the wind, in shadows and light. These pharaohs may have been lost to history's page, erased by rivals or hidden beneath sandstorms, but their souls persist in carvings and myths, and in the hearts of those who listen. Their stories ripple through the ages, gentle yet unyielding. Legacy is more than monuments. It is the breath of memory, the delicate dance of remembrance and forgetting. It is the silent vow that those who came before us are not truly gone. Tonight, as the world softens and sleep draws near, feel yourself connected to this timeless journey. You are part of the ancient story, woven into the fabric of eternity. Let the echoes of forgotten kings lull you toward rest. Their journey is complete, but the memory remains an endless song beneath the stars. Sleep now, wrapped in the eternal embrace of history's gentle whisper, and dream with the forgotten pharaohs, whose legacy shines quietly through the night.